Does the latest movie from the Philippou brothers, Bring Her Back, take things too far with what it shows on screen? Are there some horror movies that are just so disturbing that they should never have been made? Is Bring Her Back one of those movies? And where does all of this fit in with a Christian perspective? Before I say anything else, you should know that I'm a massive fan of the Philippou's other film, Talk to Me. I think it's a truly great movie. Some of my other favorite horror films are Midsommar, Hereditary, Nope, Barbarian, The Witch, just to name a few. So hopefully from hearing that, you can see that I am someone who's capable of enjoying a good horror movie. So why do I think that Bring Her Back is any different to those other films? I have to say, I left the movie theater feeling a real sense of unease after watching this movie. If you haven't seen the film, and big spoiler warning here guys, it basically follows a brother and sister who, after losing their dad, move into foster care with this very creepy lady who turns out to be trying to do a demonic sacrificial ritual in order to bring back her own dead daughter. My main issue with this film is that it just feels so incredibly bleak and heavy, with absolutely no levity or brightness or humor or even enjoyable entertainment. It feels like the Philippou brothers went into this wanting to create the most disturbing film possible, with any kind of meaning or humanity behind the story coming in as a second priority. And the thing is, the most disturbing imagery in this film isn't necessarily any of the brutal gore or the demonic rituals. It's the image of Laura, the foster mum, brutally punching Piper, a young blind girl, while she's sleeping. It's such a dark, horrific moment, the image of a child being beaten while defenseless. And to me, it felt like that moment was just treated as more ammunition for shock value in this movie. I think if you're gonna clearly show something as horrific and disturbing as that in your movie, you need to balance it out with some kind of light amongst the darkness. Or if you do insist on making a film that is just so bleak, you need to address a scene with weight like that beyond just using it for shock value. I understand that trauma and generational violence, especially of children, is a theme in this movie that the directors seem to be trying to explore. But I don't really feel like that moment added anything to that exploration. We all already know how brutal and horrific those things are without having to see it so explicitly on screen. And look, maybe they could have shown this scene, but if that was the case, I think that there needed to be some other beacon of hope in the film to grasp onto, to walk away with something from this movie, rather than just the message that grief will turn you into a monster if you let it, which is what I think this movie is trying to say. Even something superficial like moments of humor or entertainment could have just balanced this out a little bit more. And look, Talk to Me does this really well. It handles some heavy topics around drug addiction and societal pressure in a nuanced yet entertaining way. It does have some brutal scenes, but at the same time, there's a lot of fun moments throughout the movie too, especially when they're first experimenting with that hand thing that they find. Bring Her Back has none of that sense of fun, and the closest thing that we have to any sense of humanity or positivity is through the relationship between Piper and her brother Andy. They have a really special bond, and you can tell that they really care about each other, even though they're siblings, and even though Andy has a clear reason to dislike Piper. You can see that Andy really loves Piper, and I think this could have been something to anchor the film on so it doesn't feel so dark and horrible. But unfortunately, that aspect of the film is stained because Andy ends up ran over and then drowned in a muddy puddle by Laura. It is just horrible seeing what happens to him. And Piper, she escapes, as well as the other boy who'd been kidnapped by Laura, but both of those kids are going to be scarred forever from this ordeal that we see in the film. It is not a happy ending. And to make matters worse, Laura doesn't really face any kind of direct consequence for her actions, other than realizing at the last minute that, hey, maybe what she's doing is really messed up. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be able to make bleak movies, but if you are going to do that, I think you need to explore these heavy themes a little bit more thoroughly than they do here. The whole supernatural, demonic aspects of the plot for me just cheapen the exploration of the deeper themes surrounding trauma and family violence rather than actually enhancing them. The movie feels stuck between all of these different ideas, and it fails to actually go into true depth with any of these concepts, other than grief. But again, even what it says about grief feels like a relatively shallow take. Yes, I know that grief and refusing to accept the loss of a loved one can turn you into a bad person. Can we please go deeper than that? It could have been purely focused on family violence, especially through Andy's character. They set that up pretty well. Or it could have even gone down more of a path with Piper being treated differently due to her lack of sight. And again, I understand. Life can be bleak. Life can do horrible things to people, and I'm so thankful for the privilege and blessings that I have in my life every single day. But that being said, I do think if life does deal you those horrible cards, you have to find a way to laugh about it. Even in the most terrible of circumstances, there's some kind of dark humor there. That's how you get through them. Even if there is no happy ending, everything does it. There's humor in everything. But this movie doesn't capture that in any way, and it's a shame because I think it's a real missed opportunity from the Philippou brothers, who seem like the kind of guys that would understand that life philosophy. I've never been one to advocate for film censorship or to say that you shouldn't make movies about controversial topics or movies that depict controversial things. But that being said, I do think that you need to think very carefully about how to approach such heavy subject matter if you're gonna do it. Because my Sinners video did so well, and thank you guys so much for watching, I thought I'd also give my brief perspective on this film as a Christian. This movie doesn't present God or religion in any way, shape, or form. Maybe you could say the absence of it in the film does mean something, but mainly it pretty much just shows the opposite to all that. It has some recordings of satanic and cult-like practices, and also some possession, sort of demon, ghost stuff. And again, I'm not really the kind of person to say that you shouldn't watch certain movies or you shouldn't make certain movies. I don't think Bring Her Back is trying to say anything about religion other than to really use the demonic stuff as a horror trope and a plot device. I have been watching a few content creators talk about Sinners and say how they believe that that movie had a negative spiritual energy attached to it. And look, I don't necessarily believe that. I do still like Sinners as a movie. I have an open mind to that, but I don't really believe it at this point. But if I was going to say that kind of thing was real, I would say it about this movie, Bring Her Back. I felt uneasy walking out of this, and take all religious or spiritual belief out of it, I think when you go back to the base concept, it's a movie created to try and show you the most horrible things imaginable. For me, that's not really entertainment if it doesn't have a deeper level of intellectual substance, humor, or entertainment behind it. There's not even catharsis here for me. The good guys, they pretty much lose in this movie. There's no joy here. When I'm sitting there in the cinema watching the possessed kid eat the sharp side of a knife, or starting to rip off his own skin from his arm and eating it, that was hard to sit through. I am just sitting there regretting my life decisions going to watch this movie. I do not find it enjoyable. But hey, maybe I'm just getting sick of these shock factor, gory horror movies. Maybe they're just not for me. Maybe. But I do think that if you take out my philosophical objections to this movie, it is a decent film. The cast are absolutely brilliant. I've got to give them credit for that. Huge kudos, especially to Billy Barratt in this breakout role. I really do think it is one for him. You've also got Sora Wong in her feature film debut. She's great as well. I do kind of wish that she had a bit more to do in the script because she was really great. And also Jonah Wren Phillips, that kid, he was great as well. I am still looking forward to what the Philippou brothers do next, and I do love to see two Australians putting out movies on the big stage. I just hope that they go back to something with a bit more heart and humanity for their next project, because I think at its core, every movie needs that.